If you currently exist in the magical world of PC gaming, then chances are you probably have tried a 60Hz monitor before, or in fact you may even be using one now and you're thinking, what's the best upgrade monitor path that I should go down? And this is usually one of those questions that can linger in your mind for days and days before you see all the spec sheets, you go around, you read all the reviews, and then you still, after that, can't make a decision. Well, if that's the case, then you have come to the right video, because behind me here, we've got anything from a beautiful washed out TN 240Hz panel. This is the Benq XL2740. And then behind that, we've got the PD3220U, which is a 4K designer monitor, which is 60Hz and it's IPS. Now you can probably already see behind me the difference in these two panels by just simply looking in the background here. I mean, I can certainly notice it. You've got much better colors on the IPS panel, much better blacks, much better viewing angles, and that's where we're gonna jump over the first hurdle here, and that is the panel type. There's generally considered 4 types of panels out there at the moment that are mainstream. The first being TN, and basically TN stands for Twisted Pneumatic. And this is a panel essentially that comes in with a cheap buying cost, but also it does have really good response times, or generally has response times better than VA and IPS. However, that being said, the colors and viewing angles are generally considered worse off than all the other 3 types of monitors that we're going to talk about here today. Though, one thing I'd like to add there, if you are sitting in front of a monitor and you're gaming, which most people do on computer monitors, then the viewing angles aren't going to matter a whole lot. Though the last thing to touch on with TN panels is that because they have better response times, they also fare better in general with higher refresh rate monitors. And that's because if your refresh rate is too high and your response rates are too high as well, and that they're very slow, then what can happen here is that the next frame will actually be transitioning in before the previous frame has even transitioned properly. And this term is either known as ghosting, or if you're talking to a bunch of sleazy marketers, they may tell you it's cinematic motion blur. So TN, it does have some good benefits, but what about VA, which is known as vertical alignment? This is a technology that essentially tries to bridge the gap between TN and IPS, and then it has better viewing angles, generally has better colors. However, that being said, it's not as good as IPS, and the response times are actually in general across the industry considered the worst with this type of technology. In the past, I have had VA panels come through here, and some have had pretty good response times, around 8 milliseconds, though others have had up to 16 milliseconds in response times. So before you do go out and buy any monitor, it is always good to check the individual specs of that monitor, where in the best case scenario, we want the fastest response times, and that's the smallest number on those response times. And we also want the lowest input lag, that is if you're a gamer, and also the highest refresh rate, with generally the highest resolution available. Though with those quick explanations out of the way, let's talk about this big daddy right here. And that's what this monitor behind me, the 3220U, is. It's known in the industry as a big daddy because it's 4K, because it's IPS, because it's got Thunderbolt 3 on board. You can daisy chain up to an additional monitor off the back of this. So it does play nicely even with things like laptops. So the thing with IPS, it's called in-plane switching. This has generally got better colors and better viewing angles than the previous 2 techs that we spoke about. However, the thing with IPS is it has come a long way in recent years, where response times are actually coming down to pretty good levels. I recently took a look at both Benq and ViewSonic's 1440p options 27-inch high refresh rate monitors, and they had pretty good response times where I saw around 5 milliseconds on an IPS panel, and that's real response times. And another thing we'll quickly interlude here is don't look at those box numbers that you see when they say 1 millisecond response time or 4 milliseconds response time. Generally, the real world numbers are a bit worse than that. Take for instance this XL2740 behind me. It's a 240Hz monitor, and they say on the box it's a 1 millisecond response time. But after doing some in-depth 1000 FPS testing, both with the UFO catcher and also in CSGO and even Fortnite, I found that the response times are around 4 to 5 milliseconds. And even when you put on the overdrive feature, which Benq specifically calls AMA, on high or premium, it didn't make a difference. So in other words, for a TN panel, this wasn't really giving out the best response times, as well as the input lag on this particular monitor wasn't that good to begin with. I measured around 5 to 15 milliseconds and also added an extra 8 milliseconds on top if you were to enable G-Sync. So it is important with those previous tests that we spoke about to analyze them and know if you're getting the best purchase for your money. So basically, quite simply, with this monitor right here, the 2740, it's not my best pick for a 240 Hz monitor. I have seen better out there, both here on the channel and also around on the internet. There are some other reviewers out there that do really good in-depth monitor testing, and you'll know if they're showing you the right specs you want to see. However, that being said, let's move over to the last technology here, and that is OLED. And essentially, we are not yet seeing, and I really hope we do, OLEDs being introduced into high refresh rate computer monitors. We're talking 24-inch, 27-inch, and even 32-inch. We have yet to see a monitor implement OLED that has a high refresh rate. And the thing is, it's so perfect for this technology. And honestly, I can't wait to see the day where we do get OLED in computer monitors. And the reason being is because they generally have response times that are the best in the industry. We're talking sub 1 millisecond. That's right. You just go from frame to frame, perfect transition, no ghosting or no sleazy cinematic motion blur. And to top all that off, the viewing angles are great, the colors are gorgeous, the blacks are so deep you wouldn't even know if you're being sucked into a black hole. And the best benefit on top of that is it emits detail through green and red a lot more than cheap white LED monitors ever could. And now that we've got OLED out of the way with, and honestly, don't ask me when an OLED gaming monitor is coming out, because my guess is as good as yours. We've been teased these for years and we'll probably be teased for a few more years yet. Though what we've got here is going from one end of the spectrum to the other, and that we've got a 1080p 240 Hz monitor, and then over this side we've got a 4K 60 Hz IPS panel. And so if you had to pick one of these two right here, it would just come down to what do you do as an individual personally. When we look at this 3220U right here, I would be picking this over this. And that's simply because the majority of my time spent behind a computer is either doing video or photo work where I need color accuracy. And another thing about 4K IPS 60 Hz monitors is a lot of the time they'll either be perfectly color accurate, which this one is out of the box, or they will come close to very color accurate. So that means when you're editing videos or photos, you won't have to worry if your monitor is deceiving you and whether that final product's going to be bad. Another thing that makes monitors like this really good is generally the stands included are phenomenal. In this case, we've got horizontal and vertical swivel adjustment, as well as tilt and height adjustment. So you can also use it in portrait mode if you wish to use another 4K monitor too. Though as we spoke about before, this does come at a cost, and that's generally your response times as well as your 60 Hz refresh rate. What we saw in response times with this monitor in particular was around about 15 milliseconds. And this doesn't really change a whole lot if you use the AMA feature, aka overdrive. Now there's three different settings here: off, high, and premium. And it's funny to see that there wasn't really a difference on the 3220U. And honestly, if you're buying this for photo or video accuracy work, it's not going to make a huge difference. But also if you're doubling down with this monitor as a 4K gaming monitor, I would like to see those response times improved a little bit. But the response times on this TN panel here, the 2740, I wasn't impressed with this. We were getting on all three different overdrive settings, just like this 4K monitor, there was no real difference to the response times in that they were around 4 to 5 milliseconds, which honestly for a 240 Hz TN panel should be a bit better. I'd like to see this down to the 2 milliseconds region, even if you've got a bit of artifacting or haloing. That being said, the input lag on the 3220U was actually phenomenal, where the best frame was 10 milliseconds. That's total system input lag, and the worst frame was 23 milliseconds with an average of 15.73 milliseconds. Anyhow, both monitors here include a really good OSD as well as included external pucks where you can control the settings of the monitor via the controls itself. You've got the ability to change the colors, brightness, contrast levels, as well as different preset modes, and the black equalizer, which in this case, the black equalizer is essentially working just like a gamma booster. So I have seen better black equalizers on monitors in the past that have come through the channel here. Though in terms of the coating on the screens themselves, the 3220U has the perfect coating on it. It's like this semi-gloss that still reflects out sunlight, but it still lets those colors come through just in such a rich manner. Honestly, I haven't seen a coating on a monitor this good in my life, and being a balance between matte and gloss, but still allowing the detail to come through as best as possible. This one here is a little bit on the matte side, and when we put up an orange background, we did get a slight bit of visible cross hatching, which also could be due to the 27-inch 1080p pixel density not being anywhere near as good as this 4K 32-inch right here. Though continuing on with the differences, of course, when you're going for a designer monitor that's calibrated out of the factory, it is going to cost quite a bit. This one here comes in at 1200 USD, and this one right here 550 USD. If you're in Australia, you're looking around 1000 AUD and around 2000 AUD respectively. That's due to the Aussie dollar being quite weak right now. However, the difference between the feature set right here is that this one here, of course, the colors are a little bit off out of the box, though you can calibrate them, but you still got a TN panel for editing content, as opposed to the 3220U, which has a 10-bit panel built in, and you've got different modes to select from. For instance, if you're a Mac user, you can change it to Mac mode, or if you're photo editing, you change it over to sRGB. And there's also even a mode designed for CAD users in mind, where they've collaborated with the team to get the best factory mode possible for using AutoCAD. Anyhow, the more I use this designer monitor, and you're probably starting to be like, yo, I'm a gamer, stop talking about design features here. I was actually like getting more impressed with this thing. But you've got a KVM switch built in, which is keyboard, video, and mouse switch. So essentially, you can plug in a keyboard and mouse up to this monitor and use that keyboard and mouse for two different systems without having to plug in the keyboard and mouse to the different systems themselves. You've also got picture by picture, picture in picture, and also split mode, where you can have two different color profiles up at the same time if you want to validate work. So now we've taken a look at these monitors and seen what the differences are, I can now give you guys a clear-cut recommendation on what you should do if you're in different situations. And basically, we've got the 240 Hz monitor there with the TN panel. This is generally going to be overall not just cheaper than designer monitors, but it's also going to offer better input lag, as well as giving you better response times in general. Now keep in mind, as we saw with this 2740 back here, I've seen better 240 Hz panels come through the channel with better response times and even better input lag. So do make sure you check out individual reviews for that monitor, just to make sure it's got the best input lag and it's got really good response times, especially the higher the refresh rate. So basically 240 Hz TN, that's if you want the at most competitive advantage and you don't care a whole lot about color accuracy, or you're not going to be really editing photos or video work on that monitor to begin with. Then we've got what I would call the in-betweener. That is the 1440p IPS or VA, and it's 27-inch generally. These monitors are coming in my opinion, the best overall monitor, and that is because they've got that IPS panel, which does give out good colors. And if you've got someone, or you know someone who can give you a color profile, if you want to accurately edit photos or videos on that thing, then it's going to offer a good option to do that. But at the same time, they've generally got really good input lag, they've got decent response times, where in the case of the recent ViewSonic and Benq monitors I took a look at, I'll put the links up there for both of those came in with some solid response times and really good input lag, where I liked both of those monitors. Even though they were a bit pricey, they weren't as pricey as this 32-inch monitor behind me, but they were a bit more pricey than this 27-inch 1080p 240 Hz panel right here. So if I had to only pick one monitor, I would pick the 1440p 144 Hz IPS panel, just simply because it gives me the options to move into other things other than gaming, and it also does gaming very well. However, now we move over to the one that I use personally a lot. In fact, I use a 4K monitor so much that I've got two of them, and this is my preferred setup. When I'm video editing, this just simply gives me the most screen real estate, in that I've got more pixels to play with, but also at the same time, I've got a bigger viewing area and I can do a lot more and put a lot more in each of these panels, as well as when I'm editing 4K video work, I can accurately see if that 4K video work is blurry, or if it's in focus, or if the colors are accurate. As we said before with the 3220U, we've got that color accuracy out of the box, So we know that you guys out there, when you're watching these YouTube videos behind the scenes, we have to make sure that the colors are accurate, or I'll end up looking like a lobster, which honestly I have been guilty of in the past. We all make mistakes. And there it all is with gaming monitors. I hope this video has helped you decide on which monitor you need for you, because at the end of the day, it's all about what you need and not what someone else needs. So if you're a competitive gamer, you need the best competitive edge, go for the 240 Hertz. If you want the balance, the best of both worlds, go for the 144 Hertz 1440p IPS. If you're a designer or a creator like me and you find yourself just editing videos or editing content all the time, or even making music and stuff like that, then definitely go for the 4K 32-inch monitor. And in terms of the OLED monitor, also one more hot tip before I get on out of here. If you're currently on a 60 Hertz monitor, then definitely keep that monitor around. I find that having a second cheap monitor always works as a great stopgap if you need to do extra work, or if you say, for instance, you just want to read the news while you're playing a game and say you got fragged and you're waiting to respawn. Having a second monitor, especially a cheap one, it does go a long way in helping your productivity, but also making your life just that much better. And with all that out of the way, if you enjoyed today's video, then be sure to hit that like button. Also, let us know in the comments section below, what monitor are you currently rocking? And if you're looking for an upgrade in the monitor market, which upgrade would you be looking at and why? Love reading your thoughts and opinions as always, just like this question of the day here, which comes from Fernando Ramirez. And they ask, could you run a 430 watt power supply with this setup? And they're speaking about our AliExpress video where we made a PC on a box. I'll put the link to that video up there. But basically, if you're using an RX 470 or an RX 570, and I'm assuming you're talking about the 430 watt thermal take power supply, because there's not many of these 430 watt power supplies out there, I would actually say you're borderline risking it. That power supply from memory is quite bad. And if you're using maybe a reference RX 470, you should be okay. But if you're using, say, for instance, a factory OC RX 570, then you may have problems with that 430 watt because it's not essentially a true 430 watt power supply. Anyway, hope that answers that question. And also, before I get on out of here, a big thanks to Benq for sending these monitors out here for testing and review purposes. My favorite out of the two was honestly the 3220U. Even though it's the most expensive, they have done a phenomenal job in what it's intended for, as opposed to the 2740, which sort of misses the mark a little bit in the response times and the input lag. This thing right here just has all the features you would want if you're a video editor or a content creator, or even editing photos or doing whatever you would do. The 3220U just simply nails it, and it does even show just by looking at it in the background right here. Though that aside, if you guys have stayed this far and you're enjoying that content and you're not yet subbed, then you know what to do. Hit that sub button, ring that bell, and I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.